We want to thank the media for attending this CAFL governing body of American Football League press release. We would like to address some relevant matters to football in the country, and I'll get right into it. The Commonwealth American Football League wishes to remind all that it is the governing body for American football in the entire country of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, a privilege that it has held for the last 45 years. Recently, a rogue group calling themselves the Bahamas American Football Federation has been parading itself with the assistance of a local media personality as the one and only federation for American football in the Bahamas to the international world. This organization is headed by one Delise Anthony, an American foreigner who has invaded our shores first in 2006 on a B-2 passport, purporting that she came to introduce American football to the Bahamas, a sport that has been played since the 1950s as an organized league since the 1970s. Some may recall that the CAFL challenged this person back in 2006, which had at the time misrepresented herself to the International Federation of American Football, IFAF, as the governing body for American football in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. From this dishonest act, the International Federation, without proper investigation, granted Ms. Anthony membership, which she came waving in conquering fashion in the face of those who opposed her. The CAFL was called to address this matter, and after being warned, Ms. Anthony then sought to convince the government and the Minister of Sports to support her. The then Minister, Desmond Bannister, was appraised that Ms. Anthony had been accredited illegally, and she arrogantly insisted that she had the accreditation and there was nothing that the government of the Bahamas can do about it. Ms. Anthony was then warned by the ministry and, however, chose to proceed with her agenda without right and without fear, supported by Nassau Guardian reporter, now editor of the Freeport News, Fred Stirrup. The CAFL vehemently protested and caused the government of the Bahamas to write a diplomatic letter to the International Federation advising of all particulars and ordering that the International Federation remove the Bahamas flag from its register. An investigation then proceeded into Ms. Anthony's activities primarily in Grand Bahama and caused a sudden disappearance of herself from the visual landscape. Pressure was also put to bear by parents in Grand Bahama and the local footballers there, and called on the CAFL, the Bahamas Immigration, and Bahamas Customs based on reports of various inappropriate activities, one of note which was very embarrassing, where it is alleged that the Customs Department confiscated football pads, helmets, and other equipment from the youth league that was formed. Further accusations allege that Ms. Anthony was selling the football equipment that was declared as donations and charging coaches to coach in what was thought to be a non-profitable league. Additionally, and prior to her disappearance, Ms. Anthony, it is said, had refused to be accountable for monies raised in the name of her illegally operating football league. As mentioned, feathering her bonnet became the undertaking of Mr. Fred Stirrup, a notable opined writer for the Nassau Guardian. In one of his recent articles, where he seems to be caught in a record of congratulatory notes to Ms. Anthony and her ability to take a national team of players from the Bahamas to Panama. Her BAFF sponsored the trip to Panama. This team that represented themselves as a national team was embarrassed 56-0 by the Panamanian team, who had just ventured into the game of football for the first time. And yes, as usual, Mr. Stirrup, Miss Anthony's apparent chief cheerleader, lesser skirt and pom-poms, opines that it was a great achievement. Sometime around 2010, under pressure, Miss Anthony disappeared from the local landscape again, although there were reports to the CAFL of her sighting now and again. However, and recently, Miss Anthony has reappeared in a typical ordering and aggressive manner. And it is interesting that her re-emergence is at a time when there's a hive of football activity in the Bahamas other than our local contact and flag football leagues. You will recall that last year the country hosted 2 NCAA football games, a host of football camps, and a Dan Marino and Friends football event. And at each of the aforementioned events, like a ghost of the night, puff, there appears Miss Anthony. And out of the blue, she is now the coordinator for the Popeyes Bowl game. And puff again. She and another of her sidekicks, Stanford Doheny, appears at the Dan Marino flag game, attempting to corner the minister and his Miami Dolphin friends, Jason Clark and others, carefully staying away from all CAFL personnel. In each accord, Ms. Anthony was found to be seeking endorsements to her agenda. As our Frank Rutherford reported recently, his nephew, the former NFL player, DeVard Darling, declared that he wanted nothing to do with her. Today, a revived program has commenced with a slew of news articles from Fred Stirrup praising and congratulating Ms. Anthony and the BAFF to enhance her tarnished image and promoting her latest agenda, which appears to be the takeover of flag football in the Bahamas. Ms. Anthony's latest press release, presented in one of Freddie Stirrup's recent press releases, is that the IFAF, the International Federation, has selected the Bahamas to host the World International Flag Football Tournament, proposed sometime in 2016. And clandestinely, Ms. Anthony has been soliciting the support of the local flag football leagues without no success, evidenced by their recent press conference. Ms. Anthony, we understand, produced a letter proclaiming that the Ministry of Tourism had endorsed the World Flag Tournament, to which I personally spoke with the Minister of Tourism, who admitted that Ms. Anthony made her pitch to him, which is within the government's policy of sports tourism. But he advised Ms. Anthony that she needs to get the support of the local governing body before an approval of assistance could be considered. It is alleged that she is asking for somewhere in the area of $150,000 in operating costs, which included, no doubt, covering her expenses, which sounds very familiar to the events of 2008. The minister assured me that he could not in any conscience support this, as it would be a betrayal as a former CAFL president, to which I was comforted. Another problem for Ms. Anthony, to which has been brought to the attention of the governing body, is that the International Federation requires that membership, participation, and candidates to host IFAF events must have a league, must have a set number of teams, and must have held a playoff and a championship game, and must be the governing body or governing federation, or is sanctioned by the governing body, none of which Ms. Anthony has. Further, Ms. Anthony's American Football Federation has no flag league and no teams, evidenced by the recently declarations of the 3 aforementioned flag football leagues existing in the Bahamas at their press conference. This press conference evidently irked Ms. Anthony and her press liaison, Fred Stirrup, so much that Mr. Stirrup went into an editorial tirade in his Nassau Opine article of Friday, September 11, 2015, attacking the press conference, and in particular attacking Mr. Melvin Ferguson, another interesting person in this matter to which we expose. First, for your recollection of attendance at this most revealing press conference, chaired by Bahamas Flag Football League President Jason Clark, sat an alleged president of the Commonwealth American Football League, Melvin Ferguson, who also sits as the commissioner of the Bahamas Flag Football League, which, as noted, presents an interesting line of events and concern. Firstly, Mr. Ferguson is a Bahamian American and the recent former commissioner of the CAFL, who recently ran for president of the CAFL and at the time, unknowingly to the CAFL, was an advisor, or as some say, an executive of Ms. Anthony's BAFF. Mr. Ferguson did not declare at any time his involvement with Ms. Anthony. Or, as we have been informed, he didn't declare either to the Bahamas Flag Football League. To say the least, the executives of the CAFL were astonished by this degree of dishonesty and the clandestine operation, which was recently exposed by none other than Mr. Congratulatory himself, Fred Stirrup, in his article again of Friday, September 11th. At the press conference, it is obvious that Mr. Ferguson found himself in a duplicitous position. First, as you would read in Mr. Stirrup's article, he brought to the attention of all that Mr. Ferguson was disingenuous, and that's calling one a liar in nice media words. And he exposed that Mel was working for Ms. Anthony's BAFF, while purporting to represent the CAFL and sitting as the commissioner of the Bahamas Flag Football League. And in this duplicitous sitting, Mr. Ferguson's president was sitting right beside him, that is Jason Clark. But as Mr. Stirrup slashed away with his pen, he too has some questions to answer. How is it that he came to know and support every move of Ms. Anthony to express them in such detail in his opined articles? Why all of a sudden there was such vehemence levied at Mr. Ferguson? First, Mr. Stirrup states that Ferguson had no authority to represent the BAFF. And in his anger, it appeared that he expected Mr. Ferguson to represent Ms. Anthony's unrecognized Bahamas American Football Federation. And maybe, like Judas, his feet became cold. The question from the CAFL quarters was our former commissioner, a Benedictino. And another question is, how much did Bahamas Flag Football League President Jason Clark know of Ferguson's maneuvers with Ms. Anthony, as he sat aside him, like Judas, live on national television? In our opinion, Mr. Ferguson ought to resign as Commissioner of Bahamas Flag Football. And if he does not do the honorable thing, he should be fired. And for the record, as was seemingly thought, Mr. Ferguson is not the elected president of the Commonwealth American Football League. In conclusion, the CAFL wishes to advise all that we are the governing body of American football in the country of the Bahamas. We do not recognize a body purporting to be a recognized body of the International Federation for the Bahamas. We have no relation with the International Federation, nor do we have we ever expressed an interest to have a relation. We declare that no foreign-led entity should be allowed to waltz into our country, set up shop, cohort with international bodies, and tell us that they are in charge with unnationalistic Bahamians seeking to proffer from their own egos and pockets. We wish to declare that we are satisfied that the Minister of Tourism did not sell us out, although there are those in his ministry who may have ignorantly uttered sentiments of endorsement unknowingly of the true facts and situation which the minister indicated an indifference. We wish to condemn the actions of Fred Stirrup, who continues to print garbage, that the government of the Bahamas has no control over international sporting organizations, which is true, providing that the government wishes to be a part of the organization in the first place. So the doping analogy that Mr. Stirrup used as an example is not applicable in this case, and it's a weak position. And to the reading, visual, and audible public, here's the news break you ought to know. The CAFL has no interest in membership into the International Federation, and this was stated to them all the way back in 2009. We do, however, not speak the same for Bahamas flag football leagues of the archipelago. We acknowledge that there are international flag tournaments that they would naturally have a participating interest. The governing body has expressed, would support such endeavors, but will not support any endeavor that may seek to erode the foundation of what was established by our forebears over the last 50 years. The sovereign question is, at what price are we to pay that is not a detriment to the authority of the government-recognized governing body for American football in this country, of our Bahamas, of our sovereignty? The CAFL's primary objective is to steer and develop young men towards scholarship opportunities into Canadian and United States colleges and universities. And our efforts have been within an expensive sport and with very little funding. We thank the Ministry of Youth and Sports and its minister and directors for the help over the years and for their continued recognition of the Commonwealth American Football League as the governing body for American football in the country. We intend, going forward, to communicate our position to the government of the Bahamas, the IFAF International Federation, and to the Popeyes Bowl Committee. We will bring official charges once again to the attention of the Ministry of Tourism and the Ministry of Youth and Sports and the Department of Immigration as to what we consider to be illegal activities of Miss Lilisa Anthony in this country via our league attorney. I wish to thank the press for coming today. That is item 1 on our agenda, because I am also privileged to announce that the teams of the Commonwealth Football League, Commonwealth American Football League, have selected Mr. Antonio Maycock, to be the next president of the Commonwealth American Football League. As the teams have voted, we are now required to vet that at a council meeting that will be held, if not by the end of the week, and the official announcement and the official seating of Mr. Maycock in that position we expect to happen by the end of the week. Once again, a thank you. I would invite, if they wish, Travis Thompson, he may wish to say a few words, from the Jets Football Club, Mr. Ian Simonet from the Pros Football Club, and also, if he wishes to, Mr. Antonio Maycock is here with us today. He may wish to say a few words that is another part of the press conference. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.